Necromancy is just around the corner and subjugation armor is rising in price, so now is the perfect time to take on K'ril Tsutsaroth. So in this video I will show you the loot of 5000 Kril and I'll show you exactly how I did it on my Iron Man while barely using any supplies. Just like our Kril KC, we are closing in on 5000 subscribers, so if you want more high quality RS content, make sure to like and subscribe. Special thanks to my first channel members, more about them at the end of the video. K'ril Tsutsaroth is the commander of the Zamorakian armies waging war within the God Wars dungeon, and can be taken on once the player has reached level 70 Constitution. Defeating Kril will allow you to snag some of the unique boss drops like the Zamorak Godsword, Zamorakian Spear and Subjugation Armor set. I will cover all the loot that we got in 5000 KC, but first I will show you my methods and all the tips I can give you so you can get this boss collection log or just make some AFK money. As I mentioned in my previous big boss videos, I like to find AFK methods that require as little supplies as possible. I'm willing to lose some KC an hour if it means lesser upkeep costs. Especially as an Iron Man account, saving on time making supplies can be extremely valuable. And I'm happy to say that just like my Archglacier method, my Kril method pretty much uses no supplies at all. And even with this method, where I use almost no supplies, the kill times are still ranging from 10 to 15 seconds. So while you can do many things to increase the DPS beyond what I do here, at a boss like Kril with such short kill times, you really are running into diminishing returns. Let's say for argument's sake you somehow double your damage output by using all kinds of potions, familiar and best in slot gear. Regardless of how much faster you get the kill, at a boss like Kril, you will be spending most of your time waiting for the boss to respawn again, with a respawn timer of about 35 to 40 seconds. So with that in mind, even with double the damage, you would only be getting about 15% more KC an hour. And doubling damage using buffs is not even remotely realistic anyway. So unless you have infinite GP to spend and just want the collection log as quickly as possible, it is not gonna be worth spending the extra supplies to get that 10 or 5% extra KC an hour. With that said, let's have a look at what loadout we actually use. As you can see, for our helmet, top and bottoms, we are rocking the subjugation robes. You can honestly quite comfortably downgrade or upgrade to any other armor you have for these slots. I personally chose these robes as they are non-degradable and these are non-augmented, which helps me save on invention charges. I don't augment them because I can put all the biggest DPS boosting perks on my weapon, and a lot of the defensive perks that most people have on their armors are really not useful here. That of course brings us to the weapon, which is the Inquisitor Staff. The Inquisitor Staff is a tier 80 weapon, but becomes the strongest weapon in the game when you use it against a monster that is weak to magic. Kril, of course, is weak to magic, making the staff the ideal weapon to use here. If you don't have it, you can probably get away with using much worse magic weapons, but if you are struggling with lower level weapons, you can also try to make up for it by using certain auras or stat boosting potions that I don't use. As I mentioned, this staff is augmented, and I am rocking the Precise 6 plus Demon Slayer perk combo on the first gizmo, and then Equilibrium 4, Ruthless 3 on the second gizmo. Demon Slayer is a huge perk here, so if you can't get it comboed like this on your staff, then I do suggest you use at least one augmented armor piece with it on. The necklace is very important for this setup. It is the Demon Horn necklace. And this is probably the one item that you can't really change out if you want the method to remain as AFK as possible. It essentially allows us to fully upkeep prayer without ever drinking a single potion. But we will need to combo this necklace with another item in the inventory that I will talk about after we covered all the gear. We use Cinderbane gloves here, as always. If the target is poisonable, then these gloves are the best. The ring we use is the Reaver's ring. It does slightly reduce accuracy, but that shouldn't matter if you use my exact setup. If you have changed some things, then it might be worth swapping this out with another ring if you are no longer having 100% accuracy. We use the Zug Cape here. You can use either the magic variant or the combined one, and this will boost your Omnipower ability to do huge damage. For the pocket slot, I use the Scripture of Wen. You can really use any damage boosting pocket slot item, it's not super significant, so I just use the Wen book because I have a ton of pages left over from my Araxxor video. Finally, we have a rune pouch, which is mainly used for the air and fire runes that we will be using. If you don't have a rune pouch, just make sure to put those runes in your inventory instead. Now, let's look at our inventory. The only really important item here for this setup is the attuned ectoplasmator. And you'll also have to keep this charged up with ghostly essence, which is the only real supply that we are using in this method. Having this item in your inventory will scatter all infernal ashes dropped by the boss and minions automatically. If you then have the demon horn necklace I mentioned earlier equipped, it will restore your prayer points and you will never run out. If you don't have this item, then you can instead bring a bunch of prayer restore potions, which will make it less AFK, as you will have to upkeep your prayer points manually. Next up I have the Spring Cleaner, which is used to elk or disassemble the salvage drops that we get. We also are bringing one single prayer restoration potion. As I mentioned, the Demon Horn necklace and ectoplasmator combo is enough to upkeep our prayer throughout the entire AFK session, but the first time you enter the Zamorakian God Wars dungeon area, all your prayer points will be drained completely. So I tend to drink a single super restore dose so I can activate my prayers and start AFKing right away at the beginning of a session. Then I have the level 99 magic cape here. The only reason I have this here is because I am using the normal spellbook to do Kril, but if I actively do other bosses in between, I tend to swap to the ancient spellbook, so this way I can just load my preset when I want to do Kril and just swap to the spellbook I need to if I have to. Next up is the completionist cape, but don't worry, you don't need to get comp to actually AFK Kril. I just use it because it has a teleport from the quest cape that allows me to teleport straight to the Glacor cave. Entering the Glacor cave will give you a 5% damage buff in the God Wars dungeon and is well worth it. It lasts for 4 hours when you get it, and you'll have to complete the Ritual of the Majorette quest to access this buff. I also bring some note paper, which I mainly use to note the strength potions that Kril drops quite often. He also drops super attack potions and super restores, but I personally have enough of those and don't want to use the note paper on them. And then finally you can just fill out the inventory a little bit with one of each of the drops that you can get, just so your inventory is organized while you AFK the boss. If you absolutely want the fastest KC an hour, or if you already downgraded other parts of the method and you need to make up for it, there are some things that you can do. The most obvious thing you might see that I'm not using are overloads. People tend to take them to every single PVM scenario, but you can do this fine without using them, and it's still completely AFK and still completely safe. Next up is a familiar, such as a Ripper Demon, which can add a bit of damage, but again, the difference will not be that huge, considering how short the fights already are. And the same can be said for Weapon Poison, which is a nice increase in damage, but again, not hugely impactful for such a short fight. You're going to want to use Soul Split and either the tier 95 or tier 99 damage boosting prayer for magic. To enter the arena, you're going to have to defeat 40 Zamorakian enemies in the God Wars dungeon. There is a bunch of imps scattered throughout that you can take out easily for some easy KC, but even better is the Totem of Intimidation, which if you have this active on Anachronia, you'll be able to enter the arena anytime without meeting the KC requirement. Let's take a look at where you should stand when you're AFKing Kril. Head over to the corner on the opposite side of the entrance, and then stand on this exact position. You can line it up quite easily with the pillar and the wall architecture. The thing is, when Kril spawns, so do his 3 minions. and if those minions attack you before Kril can, then your character will retaliate and you'll have to defeat them before you can move on to Kril. That's why this position is so good. Kril will always be your first target, allowing you to waste less time and get the most KC per hour. This is the ability bar that we use. Greater Chain is really going to help you clear up the minions really quickly, and then Omni Power is going to be your main big damage burst to Kril. As far as auras go, Kril is pretty good because you don't need the Vampirism aura or the Penance aura like you do for most AFK bossing methods. In fact, you can do this without having a single aura available to you. That being said, just use any damage boosting aura that you have available. Depending on the aura, you can expect anywhere between 80 or 90 KC an hour. And with that being said, you are ready for this method. So let's have a look at the loot you can expect to get if you decide to do this for 5000 KC. As always, I've been keeping track of all the loot we received using rune metrics. So let's have a look at everything we got. All the loot and rewards we will talk about in this section includes all the loot we got from Kril himself, but also includes all the loot we got from the minions we took out passively. As I am an Ironman, I always like to start by showcasing how much GP you can get without selling any of the items to the Grand Exchange. So, if we take the pure GP drops from this boss, over 5000 KC, we gained a total of 49 million GP. We can get slightly more GP by selling the steel arrows and darts that we got to any general store in the game, and then also elk some of the alkables that we got. That would bring us up to 57 million GP. With that said, if you were to sell all the loot from this entire grind on the Grand Exchange, it would have totaled 817 million GP, which is a decent sum for such an AFK and easily accessible boss, especially if you are someone who enjoys completing collection logs. The GP per hour then averaged out at 13.9 million GP per hour, completely AFK and with almost no upkeep costs at all. This is almost entirely profit, unlike many other bossing methods. It should be noted though that the GP per hour is likely to fluctuate after Necromancy releases, depending on how the subjugation prices are impacted by that new skill. In total, we got 40 million magic XP here, as well as 13 million constitution XP. Even though this is such an old boss, because you can kill it so quickly now, even to this day it's a great XP method. We also got 1.5 million prayer XP totally for free by automatically scattering the ashes from Kril and the minions using the Demon Horn necklace and the Ectoplasmator. We were also able to get a ton more XP in the form of effigies, as we were able to get 50 ancient effigies in this grind. I'm not gonna go into all the math again here, as I covered it quite thoroughly in my ArchClaysor video, but I was able to convert these into a nice 6.7 million XP, spread across all these skills, with a hefty majority of that XP being poured into agility. Some of the notable supply loot that we get from Kril are 9,500 zammy wines, which are of course an ingredient in overloads and don't really have any better way to get them, especially this AFK and without input costs. Next up, we also got about 2,500 more Infernal Ashes that were noded, and so they weren't automatically scattered, but they could still be manually scattered for more prayer XP. Next up, we have 2,000 Lantidime Seeds, which should net you a nice amount of herbs. Then we got 18,000 Blood and Death Runes, especially the Blood Runes are quite nice to stack up on a bit, as they are used in all the best spells. Then using the magic notepaper, I was also able to get 1,400 super strength potions. Personally, I didn't pick up the other ones, but if you did, you could also get the same amount of attack potions, super restore potions, and Zamorak brews. Additionally, another thing that I missed out on, but you could get a ton of, are heart clues, elite clues, and marks of war. Sadly, I didn't realize it when I was doing this grind, but I was capped on all of these. And that brings us to the unique drops. Kril has quite a few unique boss drops, and most of them are quite useful in some way. First, I want to talk about War Priest. All the bosses and enemies throughout the entire God Wars dungeon have a chance to drop pieces of War Priest armors of their respective gods. As a low to mid-level player, these hybrid armors are quite useful if you are looking to do some low-level hybrid content like Dagonoth Kings. But beyond and past that, its main use will be to get yourself some easy invention components. Specifically for Kril, of course, that's gonna be Zamorak components, which are quite useful to get yourself some of the best in-slot perks in the game. You can only own one of each piece of War Priest armor, so every time you get a piece, just make sure to disassemble it right away so you can keep getting your highest chance of getting War Priest armor drops. The thing is, as the minions also drop these, you're gonna get a ton of these. Personally, in my KC, I was able to obtain 156 War Priest pieces, which of course converted into the same amount of Zamorak components. These subjugation drops are the big money makers at the moment for this method. They make up about 33% of the total loot value for this boss at the moment. It should be noted that these prices have gone up recently, as it has been confirmed that they will be useful for the necromancy skill. So if you are looking into this method for GP in the future, it might have gone up significantly or down significantly depending on the prices of these armor sets. In total, we were able to get 42 unique subjugation drops. That's slightly under the drop rate, but luckily enough, our most obtained item was the rope top, which at the moment holds the highest value. Interestingly enough, at around 2900 KC, the rope top was actually the last item I got to complete the collection log. Next up, we have the Zamorakian spear, of which we were able to pick up 4. This spear is a tier 75 weapon and a great entry level weapon to start taking on the corporeal beast, especially if you upgrade it to the tier 80 chaotic spear. This is probably the most attainable spear on Iron Man to try your luck at the corporeal beast early on. And if you're curious what kind of loot you can get from the corporeal beast, then I also have my video on that linked in the description. Then we have the remaining drops, which are significantly less useful, but could have some niche uses as an Iron Man depending on how far you've progressed into your account. First up being the Ward of Subjugation, and that could just be a straight up magic shield upgrade if you haven't gotten a better one up until that point. In 5k KC we picked up 7 of these wards. Next up we have the Steam Battle Staff, which I always thought was a weird drop to come from a boss, but it can be useful before you get an Elemental Battle Staff from Master Clues, as it allows you to use spells like Humidify and Crystallize without using the water and fire runes that those spells require. In total we got 15 of these things. And last, but also definitely least, is the Zamorak God Sword. Sadly, I can't think of any better use for these than to disassemble them for Zamorak components. It does have a special attack, but with its high adrenaline cost I can't imagine it being useful anywhere, especially considering how easily you can get better special attack weapons through dragon weapons. We picked up 7 hilts and plenty of blade shards to make them all into God Swords, and with all that this video is almost over. I really do put a ton of time into these, and so, especially as a new creator, you can massively support me by subscribing, liking the video, and sharing the videos with your clan members in the game, for example. I would also appreciate it if you leave a comment, because reading them has been my favorite part of this whole content creator journey so far. I also have a Discord for you to join if you have more questions or you want to chat more closely. And finally, for those wanting to go the extra mile, you can become a channel member like these wonderful folks right here, to get access to a bunch of small perks like your name in the credits and even behind the scenes videos for each of the big videos that I release. I already have some even more ambitious projects in the works.